The road wasn't on the map. I know because I checked, twice, before my headlights found it waiting where nothing should have been. By the time I realized it only existed at night, I had already forgotten why I was trying to leave.
Welcome to Horror Audiobook.
This is not a story about getting lost. This is a story about what happens after you realize the road doesn't want you to leave. Every mile takes something from you, your memories, your name, your reasons for turning back, until the only thing left is motion. Forward, always forward. If you've ever driven at night and felt the darkness watching, if you've ever wondered whether some paths erase the people who walk them, then stay with me, because once this road appears, it never truly lets you go. Chapter 1. You should have turned around when you saw the road. The engine idled like it was holding its breath. The driver sat with both hands on the wheel, headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the dark, staring at the strip of asphalt that hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. He knew that for a fact. He had driven this highway before twice this month, once just last week. A long, dull stretch of nothing that connected one forgettable town to another. No exits, no forks, no surprises. And yet here it was. A road branching off to the right, cleanly paved, its edges too neat, too deliberate. The yellow lines were freshly painted, almost glowing, as if the darkness itself had stepped aside to let them breathe. This road wasn't here before. He said it out loud, partly to hear a human voice, partly because silence had begun to feel aggressive. The words vanished as soon as they left his mouth. No echo, no wind to carry them away, just gone. The night pressed close around the car, not just dark still. There were no insects ticking in the grass, no wind whispering through unseen trees. Even the distant hum of other cars was absent, like the world beyond the headlights had been muted. The only sounds were the low purr of the engine and the soft crunch of gravel beneath his tires when he shifted his foot, just enough to remind himself he was real. He checked the GPS again. The screen showed the familiar blue line of the highway stretching straight ahead. No side roads, no alternate routes. The branching asphalt in front of him didn't exist according to the map, or any map he'd ever trusted. He leaned forward, squinting, as if proximity might explain it. The road curved gently out of sight, disappearing into darkness that felt thicker than the rest, darker in a way headlights didn't seem to touch. Nothing new appears this late at night, unless it's been waiting. The thought arrived fully formed, uninvited, as if it had been placed gently behind his eyes. He frowned, unsettled, not by the idea itself, but by how familiar it felt, like advice he'd once been given and forgotten. He laughed short and dry. "Get a grip," he muttered. People took wrong turns all the time. Roads got added. Construction happened. Maybe he'd missed a sign. Maybe exhaustion was finally catching up to him. He'd been driving for hours, longer than he'd planned, chasing the promise of a cheap motel and a few hours of dreamless sleep. He glanced at the fuel gauge. Low. Not empty, but close enough to make decisions feel heavier. The highway ahead stretched on without mercy, the same dark ribbon it had always been. No lights, no signs of life. The new road, on the other hand, looked maintained, intentional, like someone expected cars to use it. His fingers tightened on the wheel. He imagined staying on the highway, imagined the needle slipping lower, the engine sputtering, the car coasting to a stop in the middle of nowhere. Imagine standing outside in this unnatural silence, the dark pressing against his skin. The road to the right waited. It didn't beckon, it didn't glow brighter. It simply existed, patient and unbothered, as though it had all the time in the world. He signaled out of habit, the clicking sound loud and lonely inside the car. The indicator flashed uselessly into the void. No one was watching. No one needed the warning. As the car turned, the highway slipped out of view, swallowed immediately by darkness, like it had never been there at all. The tires rolled onto the new asphalt, and the sensation was immediate, too smooth, too even. The vibration beneath the car changed subtly, like the road itself had a different density, a different weight. He checked the rearview mirror. The highway was gone. Not receding, not fading into the distance. Gone. Where it should have been was only darkness, uninterrupted and absolute, as if the world behind him had been erased the moment he committed. His breath caught. That's not possible. The words sounded thin, unconvincing even to him. He drove on. The headlights illuminated more of the same, endless pavement, gentle curves, no signs, no markings beyond the center lines. No trees close enough to define. No sky distinct enough to read. Just road and dark and the sense of being enclosed without walls. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time felt unreliable, slippery. He became aware of something else then. Not a sound, not a movement, but a pressure. The sense of being observed without a source. Like standing alone in a room and knowing with irrational certainty that someone was just outside the door. He turned the radio on. Static burst forth, sharp and invasive, making him flinch. He twisted the dial, searching for anything. Music, voices, commercials, proof of the world continuing somewhere else. Nothing but static. He turned it off quickly, the silence rushing back in like a held breath released. The road curved again, just enough to keep him from seeing too far ahead. He noticed then that there were no reflectors along the sides, no debris, no cracks. The road looked untouched, preserved. Unused. A shiver ran through him, crawling up from the base of his spine. This road wasn't here before, he whispered again. Saying it felt important, like a tether to something solid, a fact, a truth. But even as he said it, doubt crept in, not about the road, but about his certainty. He tried to recall the last time he'd driven this stretch, tried to picture the exact moment where the road should have been absent. The memory blurred. He remembered driving, he remembered night, he remembered wanting to be somewhere else. But the image of the empty stretch, of no road, felt less clear than it should have. The realization tightened in his chest. He pressed the accelerator slightly just to feel control. The speedometer climbed. The scenery did not change. No matter how fast he went, the road ahead remained the same distance away, like a painted backdrop sliding endlessly forward. Nothing new appears this late at night, unless it's been waiting. The phrase returned, heavier now, less like a thought and more like a warning he'd failed to heed. He gripped the wheel, knuckles pale, eyes fixed on the dark curve ahead. Behind him, there was nothing. Ahead of him, the road continued. And somewhere in the silence, something waited for him to keep going. Chapter 2. The road knows you're afraid. Fear did not arrive all at once. It crept in the way cold does, slowly, quietly, until the driver realized his hands were stiff on the wheel and his shoulders had been hunched for who knew how long. The road continued beneath him without interruption, but something in its shape had changed. The curve ahead felt tighter than before, not sharp enough to alarm, just subtle enough to demand attention. He leaned forward instinctively, eyes narrowing. The road bent again. Not randomly, purposefully. He exhaled, a shaky breath fogging the windshield for a brief, comforting second before vanishing. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay." The word echoed oddly in his chest, as if spoken in a room that was smaller than it appeared. He straightened, forcing his shoulders down, loosening his grip. He told himself fear distorted perception. He knew that. Long nights, exhaustion, isolation, they played tricks, made patterns out of nothing. The brain was a problem-solving machine, even when there were no problems to solve. Especially then. As if in response, the road ahead straightened. The change was immediate enough to steal his breath. The curve eased, smoothing into a long, direct stretch that disappeared into darkness without resistance. The tension in his body eased despite himself. He laughed a short, surprised sound. "See," he said to no one, "just your head." The relief felt real, warm, earned. That was when the road began to bend again. Not violently, not sharply, just enough. His heart rate ticked up. He felt it in his throat, in the soft space behind his ribs. His fingers tightened, nails biting into the worn leather of the steering wheel. The curve deepened. The realization settled like a weight behind his eyes. The road was responding. Not to speed, not to direction. To him. He experimented without fully meaning to. He loosened his grip again, unclenched his jaw, forced his breathing to slow. In, out, in, out. The road relaxed. Straightened. A chill slid through him, cold and intimate. The road doesn't chase, it waits. The phrase surfaced again, clearer now, edged with something like understanding. He didn't know where it came from, only that it fit too perfectly to ignore. Predators chased, traps waited. He swallowed and pressed on, testing the boundaries of this new, terrible knowledge. When he allowed hope to surface, thin and foolish as it was, the road behaved, became gentle, predictable, almost ordinary. When doubt crept in, when fear sharpened, the curves tightened, the darkness ahead thickened, swallowing distance. He was not imagining it. The road was teaching him how to feel. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. He stopped checking the clock after it stopped meaning anything. Time felt stretched, elastic, snapping back on itself. His body felt strangely untouched by it. No hunger, no stiffness, no ache behind the eyes. Just awareness. Just the road. At one point, he thought he saw something on the shoulder ahead, a shape interrupting the perfect emptiness. His pulse spiked, fear flaring sharp and bright. The road curved hard. His breath hitched. The headlights caught nothing but asphalt and darkness, the shape dissolving into absence. The road straightened again the moment his fear ebbed, leaving him unsettled and strangely embarrassed. "Stop it," he muttered. "You're doing this to yourself." But even as he said it, he knew the truth was worse. Fear altered perception. That was psychology. A frightened mind filled gaps, invented threats, but the road wasn't inside his head. It was beneath his wheels. He thought about experiments done in isolation tanks, about how the brain unraveled without external reference points, about how easily people surrendered certainty when feedback disappeared. The road gave feedback, just not the kind he wanted. Another curve appeared, long and shallow. His chest tightened automatically. The road tightened with it. He laughed again, softer this time, the sound bordering on hysterical. "That's not how this works," he said. "That's not how anything works." The road said nothing. It didn't need to. He tried something else. He imagined turning around. Not physically, he knew better now, but mentally. He pictured the highway behind him, the familiar stretch of nothing, the certainty of forward and back, of maps that made sense. Hope flickered. The road straightened completely, becoming so smooth and uniform it felt unreal, like driving on glass. His heart leapt. Then, without warning, the road narrowed. Not enough to cause danger, not enough to force a correction, just enough to remind him who was responding to whom. The hope drained away, replaced by a dull, creeping resignation. The road doesn't chase, it waits. He understood now. The road didn't need to frighten him. Fear was inefficient, volatile. What it wanted was something quieter. Compliance. As the realization settled, the road smoothed again, almost affectionate in its calm. His breathing slowed, his thoughts followed. The car drove on, mile after identical mile, the night unchanging, the darkness ahead infinite and unbroken. He felt himself adjusting, adapting, learning the unspoken rules. Don't panic, don't hope too much. Just drive. By the time he noticed the mile marker ahead, rising out of the dark like a pale tooth. His fear had dulled into something heavier. The number on it made no sense. He drove past it anyway, and the road waited for him to notice. It always did. Chapter 3: Mile Markers That Don't Count Forward. The mile marker stood alone in the headlights, pale and narrow, rising from the shoulder like a single finger raised in warning. The driver didn't slow. He leaned forward, squinting, waiting for the number to come into focus. 17. He frowned. That couldn't be right. He was certain. He had passed mile marker 17 already. He remembered it because the number had caught his eye, because it had felt important in a way he hadn't been able to explain at the time. A small, anchoring detail in a night full of nothing. The marker slipped past his window and vanished into the darkness behind him. He checked the dashboard clock. Still glowing, still ticking. Still wrong. He had the creeping sense that too much time had passed for such a small number to make sense, but when he tried to quantify it, minutes, hours, distance, the thoughts slid away before they could settle, like trying to count while underwater. A few minutes later, he thought it was minutes at least, another marker emerged. 16. His stomach tightened. No, he said quietly, that's not no. He slowed the car this time, easing his foot off the accelerator as if that might stabilize reality. The road responded by remaining perfectly smooth, indifferent to his unease. He stared at the marker as it approached, as if proximity might correct it. 16. It passed him with the same mute indifference as the last. He laughed, a brittle sound that scraped his throat. Okay, that's fine. But it wasn't fine. Mile markers didn't count backward, roads didn't loop without curves, distance had rules, progress had direction. The road had already taught him how it responded to fear, and now it was doing something worse. It was lying about distance. He tried to remember how far he had driven since turning off the highway, tried to picture the first marker he'd seen on this road. The memory resisted him. There had been a first one, he was sure of that, but the number on it, whether it had been high or low, near or far, slipped out of reach every time he grasped for it. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. The thought felt heavier than the others, less like a warning and more like a statement of fact. He drove on. The road curved gently, then straightened, responding to his attempts at calm. He focused on breathing evenly, on keeping his mind clear. Panic wouldn't help. Panic made the road tighten. After a while, another marker appeared. 16. Again. Identical, same height, same slight tilt, same faint grime at its base like it had always been there. He slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a stop, the sound violently loud in the oppressive silence. For a moment, he expected something to happen, expected the road to react, to punish him for defiance. Nothing did. The headlights fixed on the marker, bathing it in harsh white light. Up close, it looked real, solid, weathered just enough to be believable. He got out of the car. The night wrapped around him instantly, thick and cold. The silence was absolute, no distant hum, no insects, no wind. His own breathing sounded intrusive, obscene. He approached the marker slowly, half expecting it to vanish when he got too close. It didn't. He reached out and touched it. Concrete rough beneath his fingertips, cold. A laugh bubbled up in his chest, sharp and sudden. See, he said aloud. It's real, I'm real, this is just a weird stretch of road. The words rang hollow, even as he spoke them. He turned back toward the car and froze. The road behind him stretched on, identical to the road ahead. No curve, no sign of the place he had stopped, no indication of direction at all. Panic flared bright and hot. The road curved sharply. He spun, heart pounding, and the headlights caught the curve ahead, bending inward, tightening like a muscle. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He forced himself to breathe, to slow, to think of nothing. The road relaxed. He stood there for a long moment, the lesson sinking in with sickening clarity. The road didn't just respond to fear while he drove. It responded always. He got back into the car and pulled away, hands shaking, jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. He didn't feel tired. His eyes didn't burn. His stomach didn't growl. His throat didn't dry. His body existed in a strange equilibrium, untouched by time even as his mind frayed. The markers continued. 15. Then 15 again. Then 14. Then 15. Sometimes they repeated. Sometimes they skipped. Sometimes they appeared so close together it felt like he was crawling, and sometimes long stretches passed with none at all, leaving him desperate for the reassurance of numbers, even wrong ones. Each time he thought he understood the pattern, it changed. He began speaking the numbers aloud as he passed them, a ritual, a tether. 14, he murmured. 14 again. Okay. Saying them made them feel real. But even that comfort began to erode. The numbers lost meaning through repetition, becoming sounds rather than measures, symbols without anchors. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. The phrase looped in his mind, no longer frightening, just explanatory. At some point, he realized he couldn't remember what number he was hopping to reach. Was there an end, a zero, a town, an exit? He tried to imagine stopping, abandoning the car, walking into the dark. The thought slid away without traction, like trying to imagine flying by flapping his arms. The road didn't forbid escape. It made it irrelevant. Another marker emerged ahead. The headlights caught the number, and for a moment something like relief stirred in his chest. Then he read it. 17. His hands tightened on the wheel. The road curved gently, patiently, as if waiting for him to understand what that meant. Chapter 4. The first memory goes missing. The first thing the driver forgot was small enough to feel harmless. It happened mid-thought, like a word slipping off the tip of the tongue. He had been reminding himself, again, why he was on the road in the first place. Not the why of survival, not the immediate reason of low fuel and poor choices, but the original destination, the place he'd meant to reach before the night bent sideways. He opened his mouth to say it aloud, and found nothing there. His lips stayed parted for a second too long. He closed them, frowned, and tried again. Where was I going? The question floated in his mind without panic, without urgency. He expected the answer to rise up easily, the way obvious things did. It didn't. He searched for context instead, visuals, emotions. He remembered packing the car, remembered the weight of the bag when he lifted it, remembered the feel of the driver's seat, the smell of old upholstery and faint gasoline. But the destination itself, that detail was gone. That's weird, he murmured. The road ahead remained straight and accommodating, bathed in the narrow cone of the headlights. The curves had eased lately. He hadn't noticed when. Perhaps because his fear had dulled into something flatter, something more manageable. He shrugged it off. People forgot things when they were tired. Names, appointments, exits. It didn't mean anything on its own. The road takes what you won't notice missing. The thought passed through him like a draft, barely stirring anything at all. He drove on. Minutes or hours later, he tried to remember who he had been meeting. That absence felt stranger. Not alarming, just incomplete, like a chair missing from a room you didn't use often. He remembered having a reason to go somewhere. He remembered urgency, the sense that he needed to be there by a certain time. But the person attached to that urgency had no face. No name. No emotional weight. He didn't feel worried about disappointing them, Didn't feel guilty or anxious or relieved. The space where those feelings should have been was simply quiet. That was what unsettled him most. The road curved gently, indulgently, as if rewarding his lack of reaction. He pressed his lips together, eyes fixed ahead. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, let's think." He tried to reconstruct himself from the edges inward. His name. That was easy. It came to him without effort, solid and reassuring. He repeated it once, twice, savoring the certainty of it. Then he tried to remember who usually said his name. The image blurred. Not erased, blurred, like a photograph left too long in the sun. He laughed quietly, a nervous sound that died quickly in the car's confined space. "I need sleep," he said. "That's all this is." The car smelled faintly of dust and old coffee, familiar smells, comforting ones, proof that things still connected properly. But when he reached for the memory of his last conversation, his last real interaction with another person, his mind slid sideways. He remembered voices, but not words, faces, but no expressions, emotions without sources. The road takes what you won't notice missing. The phrase returned, heavier now, settling into the back of his mind like a rule he was slowly learning to obey. He tightened his grip on the wheel, not in fear, but in focus. He began narrating himself quietly, under his breath. "I'm driving," he said. "It's night. I turned onto this road because the gas was low." That memory still held. The fuel gauge confirmed it, needle hovering just above empty. He nodded, reassured. "I was going somewhere," he continued, "to see someone." The word felt wrong in his mouth, inaccurate, incomplete. He waited for the road to react. It didn't. Encouraged, he tried to push further. "I care about them," he said, testing the statement. Nothing stirred inside him. No warmth, no tension, no pull. The words felt like a lie, but not one that mattered. He stopped talking. The mile marker ahead appeared without ceremony. 15. Again. He barely reacted this time. Numbers had lost their authority. Distance had lost its meaning. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. He understood that now, not intellectually but emotionally, the way you understood gravity by falling. As he passed the marker, a new absence made itself known. He couldn't remember what music he liked. The realization arrived softly, almost politely. He glanced at the radio, at the familiar presets, and realized he had no idea why they were set the way they were. The stations meant nothing. Genres felt abstract. He tried to summon a favorite song, any song. His mind offered static. He laughed again, longer this time, the sound edging toward hysteria before he reined it in. "You're really doing this now?" he asked the empty car. The road remained smooth and straight, content. The loss didn't hurt. That was the most terrifying part. Each missing piece left behind not confusion, but calm. The emotional weight attached to the memories dissolved first, leaving facts without feeling, then empty spaces without distress. It was efficient, humane even. He realized then that panic would have been kinder. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. He stopped checking mirrors, stopped wondering what lay beyond the headlights. His world had narrowed to the stretch of asphalt ahead and the interior of the car. Everything else felt theoretical. He tried once more, quietly, almost pleading, to remember why any of this mattered. Why getting off the road was important. Why he was important. The questions drifted, without anchoring to anything solid. The road curved slightly, almost imperceptibly, like a hand resting on his shoulder. The road takes what you won't notice missing. He repeated the phrase this time, not as a warning but as an observation. When another memory slipped, something about childhood, about a place that used to feel like home, he barely flinched. The road ahead stretched on, unbroken, patient. And somewhere in the darkness, the road waited for him to forget something bigger. Chapter 5. You're not the first person to drive here. The first car appeared without warning. It sat on the shoulder like it had always belonged there, angled slightly toward the road, headlights dark, paint dull beneath a thin film of dust. The driver didn't notice it at first, not consciously. His eyes slid over it the way they had learned to slide over everything that didn't immediately demand attention. Then his mind caught up. He slowed, heart ticking faster, and looked again. The car was modern, not rusted, not wrecked. Its tires were full, its windows intact. The driver's door hung open just enough to suggest someone had stepped out and never stepped back in. He pulled over a short distance ahead, the act feeling strangely automatic, as though this was simply what one did when encountering something like this. The silence outside swallowed the sound of his engine as he cut it. For a moment, the sudden quiet felt louder than any noise. He sat there, hands resting loosely on the wheel, staring at the abandoned vehicle in his side mirror. "You're not real," he said softly. The words lacked conviction. He stepped out of his car. The air felt heavier here, closer to the ground. Cold seeped through the soles of his shoes as he approached the other vehicle, each step deliberate, careful. He half expected the road to curve, to react to his rising anxiety. It didn't. The road waited. Up close, the car told a story that unsettled him more than its presence alone. A travel mug sat in the cup holder, lid half-twisted, coffee inside long since gone cold. A phone rested on the passenger seat, screen dark, case scuffed from regular use. A jacket lay folded in the back, as if someone had taken it off with the intention of putting it back on soon. The driver leaned in through the open door. The interior smelled faintly of perfume and stale air, familiar, human. The keys were still in the ignition. A chill crept up his spine. No signs of struggle, no damage, no reason for abandonment except that whoever had been here had left in a hurry or not at all. He checked the trunk, empty but clean, maintained. This car hadn't been here long. Everyone thought they were just passing through. The thought surfaced unbidden, heavy with implication. He stepped back, scanning the darkness beyond the headlights, half expecting someone to be standing just outside the cone of light, watching, waiting. Nothing moved. He returned to his own car, hands trembling slightly as he closed the door and restarted the engine. The familiar sound steadied him, grounded him. He pulled back onto the road. Less than a mile later, another car appeared. Then another. They were spaced irregularly like thoughts that refused to line up. Some sat neatly on the shoulder. Others rested partially on the road, hazard lights dead, doors ajar. Different makes, different colors, all intact, all empty. He stopped checking them after the fourth. The pattern was clear enough. At one point, he passed a minivan with a child's shoe on the floor beneath the back seat. Just one, bright blue. Clean. He didn't stop that time. His breathing stayed steady, his hands stayed calm. That frightened him more than panic would have. Everyone thought they were just passing through. The phrase looped in his mind as the cars multiplied, each one a quiet testament to a life interrupted. Inside some, he glimpsed half-written notes, maps marked with routes that led nowhere, receipts dated days or years apart. Time meant nothing here. Distance meant nothing. Only the road endured. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. The driver realized something else then, something colder than fear. None of the cars faced backward. Every abandoned vehicle pointed in the same direction he was traveling. None had been turned around. None had attempted escape. Not one. The road curved gently, indulgently, as if pleased by his observation. He laughed under his breath, a dry sound. "So that's how it goes," he said. "You don't trap us, you just outweight us." The road didn't answer. He passed a pickup truck with its engine hood still warm, steam long since dissipated. The driver's door stood wide open, interior light still glowing weakly, draining itself toward nothing. On the seat lay a wallet. He slowed, then stopped, curiosity pricking through the numbness. He reached for it, fingers brushing worn leather. Inside was an ID. The name meant nothing to him. The face should have meant something. It didn't. No spark of recognition, no flicker of connection. Just a stranger. He returned the wallet carefully, closing the door with more gentleness than necessary. The road takes what you won't notice missing. He wondered how long it had taken these others to notice. How long before memory gave way to routine? How long before fear softened into acceptance? He drove on. The cars became more frequent, sometimes appearing in clusters, sometimes alone. Some had music still playing faintly through dead speakers, warped and slow, looping fragments of songs no one remembered choosing. Dark humor surfaced briefly, unwanted but persistent. "Nice place to retire," he murmured. "Great parking." The laugh that followed died quickly. A mile marker slid past. 15. Again. He barely glanced at it. The real marker now was the cars. Evidence, proof, warning. Everyone thought they were just passing through. As the road stretched on, unbroken and patient, he felt a growing certainty settle into his chest. He wasn't alone. He never had been. And if he kept driving long enough, someone else would find his car too, intact, empty, waiting. Just another quiet reminder that the road always collected its travelers. Chapter 6. The Voice That Knows Your Name. The radio turned itself on. Not abruptly, not with a burst of static or a jolt of sound. It faded in slowly, like a memory returning, a soft hiss filling the car until it became noticeable simply because it hadn't been there a moment before. The driver didn't touch the dial. His hand stayed on the wheel, steady, his gaze fixed on the road as if looking away might invite something worse. The hiss resolved into a voice. "You don't need to be afraid." It was calm, measured, human in a way the night had not been for a long time. The driver's chest tightened. The voice continued, low and even, carried on a signal that shouldn't have existed. "You're doing fine, just keep driving." He swallowed. The road ahead straightened almost imperceptibly, smoothing itself into something gentle, cooperative. "That's right," the voice said softly, "nice and easy." The driver's fear spiked, just a little, and the road curved in response, tightening like a reminder. He forced himself to breathe. The road relaxed again. The voice chuckled quietly, as if amused by something only it could see. "See, you're learning." A shiver ran through him, cold and intimate. He hadn't told anyone he was afraid. He hadn't said a word. The voice knew anyway. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. There was a pause, not static, not silence, but something that felt like consideration. "I want to help," the voice replied. "You've been alone for a long time." That wasn't true, he almost said. Then he realized he couldn't prove it was false. "You're tired," the voice went on. "Anyone would be. This road takes patience." The phrasing was careful, familiar. He frowned. "You sound like you know it." Another soft chuckle. "I know it very well." The driver's pulse quickened. "Then you know how to get off." The radio crackled briefly, as if the signal were adjusting itself. "There's no off," the voice said gently. "Not the way you're thinking." The road curved slightly, sensing the swell of fear. The driver clenched his jaw, forced calm. The road straightened. "You see," the voice said approvingly, "you're doing exactly what you need to do." The reassurance washed over him, warm and dangerous. It felt good to be acknowledged, to be spoken to have someone, respond directly to him again. That was when the voice said his name. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just once, casual, familiar. The sound hit him like ice water. He stiffened, breath catching painfully in his chest. He stopped, tried again. How do you know that? The road curved sharply for half a second before he could stop the fear from surging. Easy, the voice said quickly, soothing. Easy, don't do that to yourself. The road relaxed. The driver's hands trembled on the wheel. I don't remember telling you. You didn't, the voice said, not out loud. A sick understanding crept through him. He tried to recall his name, to anchor himself to it the way he had before, and found only a hollow echo. He knew the sound the voice had made belonged to him, but the memory attached to it had thinned, faded. The voice had said it more clearly than he could remember it himself. That's not possible, he whispered. The voice softened. A lot of things here aren't what you'd call possible, but they're real enough. The road stretched on endlessly, flawless, patient. I can help you, the voice continued. I can tell you when to relax, when to breathe, when not to think so hard. That sounds like control, the driver said, though the words lacked force. It sounds like relief, the voice countered, and you could use some. The thought slipped into him easily, dangerously. Anything that comforts you here is lying. The warning surfaced faintly, half drowned by exhaustion. He latched onto it desperately. Why do you sound like that? He asked. Why do you sound kind? The voice paused. The pause felt deliberate. Because fear makes the road worse, it said at last, and I don't want that for you. The road straightened further, becoming almost unnaturally smooth. He hated how much he wanted to believe it. Tell me something, he said. Tell me something I don't know. Another pause. You're going to forget something important soon, the voice said calmly. Something bigger than before. His stomach dropped. What? Your name, the voice replied without malice. It's already loosening. He felt it then, the way the sound of it no longer fit quite right in his mind, like a label peeling off something he still held. I can hold on to it for you, the voice said, if you want. The road curved gently, almost tenderly, as if offering comfort. That's how this works, the voice continued. I remember things so you don't have to. I guide you forward. I keep you calm. The driver's heart pounded. And what do you get? The voice smiled. He could hear it. I get to stay with you, it said, all the way. The road doesn't chase. It waits. Anything that comforts you here is lying. He repeated the warning silently, clinging to them like frayed rope. I don't need you, he said. The road curved sharply, violently this time, the headlights swinging wildly before he corrected. The voice sighed, not annoyed, not angry, patient. That's okay, it said. You'll change your mind. The radio crackled softly as the voice faded back into static. The silence returned, heavier than before. The road ahead stretched on, impossibly long. And in the quiet that followed, the driver realized something worse than fear had taken hold. He missed the voice already. Chapter 7. The road removes the need to escape. The absence arrived quietly. Not like fear had, sharp and invasive, but like fog rolling in while no one was watching. One moment the driver was aware of his situation, of the wrongness of it all, and the next, the urgency was simply gone. Nothing dramatic marked the change. No revelation, no surrender. Just the sudden realization that his shoulders no longer ached from tension. His jaw wasn't clenched. His thoughts, once frantic and looping, now drifted slowly, lazily, like leaves on still water. The road ahead stretched on, smooth and accommodating. He adjusted his grip on the wheel, not because he was anxious, but because it felt like something he should do. Habit without purpose. Wanting to leave is the first thing it kills. The phrase surfaced dimly, like a memory overheard through a wall. He didn't react to it, didn't argue. It felt less like a warning now and more like a description of a process already underway. He realized he hadn't thought about turning around in a long time. The idea of escape still existed, technically. He understood the concept the way one understood the idea of fire or rain, abstractly, without emotional charge. But the need for it had dissolved. Home no longer called to him. He tried, out of a distant sense of obligation, to remember what home felt like. The shape of rooms, the placement of furniture, the rituals that once defined his days. The images came, but they were flat, unanchored, like photographs of someone else's life. No longing followed. "That's not good," he murmured. The words sounded curious rather than alarmed. The road remained straight and patient. He passed another abandoned car, a sedan this time, silver, windows fogged from the inside. He barely slowed. The sight registered, filed away, dismissed, evidence without implication. He didn't wonder who it had belonged to. He didn't imagine himself joining it. The road didn't need him to imagine anything. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. The driver noticed that he no longer marked time at all. No mental check-ins, no attempts to measure progress. The mile markers had become scenery, no more meaningful than the unchanging dark beyond the headlights. 15. 16. 15. Numbers drifted past without weight. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. He almost smiled at the thought. He began to hum softly, an aimless sound without melody. He didn't recognize the tune, didn't care to. It filled the silence just enough to make it feel companionable. The radio stayed quiet. A small part of him noticed the absence of the voice from before, the calm reassurance, the subtle guidance. He didn't miss it the way he had at first. That too felt like progress. The road curved slightly, then straightened, responding not to fear or hope now but to something flatter, neutral, acceptance without awareness. He wondered idly what would happen if he stopped the car again. The thought didn't provoke anxiety. It didn't provoke curiosity either. It simply existed, then drifted away. Stopping felt unnecessary. So did continuing. And yet he continued. He passed a stretch where the darkness seemed closer, pressing in on the edges of the headlights. For a moment, just a moment, something like unease stirred. The road curved. His breathing slowed automatically. The unease dissolved. The road straightened. He nodded, satisfied, as if a problem had resolved itself. Wanting to leave is the first thing it kills. He no longer remembered when he'd last wanted anything at all. Hunger never came, thirst never followed. His body felt maintained, preserved in a narrow band of function. He wasn't uncomfortable. He wasn't comfortable either. He simply was. The road rewarded this state with consistency. No sudden curves, no tightening darkness, just mile after identical mile, a flawless corridor of forward motion. He thought briefly about consequences, about what it might mean if he never left this road. The thought failed to land. Consequences required a future that felt distinct from the present, and here everything blended together. One stretch of night indistinguishable from the next. He laughed softly. "Guess that answers that," he said, though he wasn't sure what question he was answering. The sound of his voice startled him slightly, not with fear but with unfamiliarity. He didn't speak much anymore. There was no one to respond. And yet he didn't feel lonely. Loneliness required absence. Here nothing felt absent. The road curved gently, like a nod of approval. He passed another cluster of abandoned vehicles, barely registering them. One had its headlights on, casting weak beams into the darkness ahead, overlapping briefly with his own before slipping behind. For a fleeting second, He wondered if someone might still be inside. The thought evaporated before it could root. It didn't matter. He realized then that the road hadn't taken his will. It had simply removed the reason to use it. There was no pressure, no coercion, no visible barrier keeping him here. Just a quiet understanding that leaving would require an effort he no longer saw the point in making. Wanting to leave is the first thing it kills. The phrase surfaced again, clearer this time, not as a warning, not as a mantra, but as a conclusion reached too late. The road ahead stretched on, endless and accommodating. And as the driver followed it deeper into the night, the last fragile threads of urgency unraveled, leaving behind a traveler who no longer questioned why he stayed, only that he did. Chapter 8. Night never ends here. At some point quietly, without announcement, the sky stopped pretending it would change. The driver didn't notice at first. He had learned not to look up. The world above the windshield had long since become an abstract suggestion rather than a place where anything meaningful happened. But when he finally did glance upward, it was with the faint expectation of difference. There was none. No thinning of darkness, no softening at the edges, no hint of gray or blue or that fragile, hopeful color that came just before dawn. The night was complete, sealed, unbroken. He frowned, mildly curious. "Huh," he said. The headlights felt dimmer. Not malfunctioning, not flickering or failing, but inadequate, as though the darkness ahead had grown heavier, more resistant. The beams pushed forward and were swallowed sooner than they should have been, shadows thickening at the edges, pooling like liquid just beyond reach. He leaned forward slightly, squinting. The road responded by remaining perfect. Smooth, straight, endless. No cracks, no debris, no variation. It looked less like a road now and more like an idea of one, rendered flawlessly and repeated without error. Morning is a memory, not a destination. The phrase drifted through his mind, soft and unquestioned. He tried, distantly, to remember the last morning he'd seen. Sunlight through a window, the sound of something ordinary, traffic, birds, a neighbor's door, the warmth of a cup held between both hands. The images surfaced, but they were pale, drained of texture. They carried no emotional weight. They could have been dreams. He realized then that he no longer expected morning. Not consciously, not as a fear or a loss, simply as a thing that no longer factored into how he understood the world. The road didn't lead to morning. It led through night. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. The driver noticed subtle changes in the shadows. They clung closer to the edges of the road now, pressing inward, thickening where the headlights couldn't quite reach. The darkness beyond felt less like empty space and more like a surface, dense, layered, waiting. He felt no urge to speed up, no instinct to slow down. The car moved at exactly the pace it needed to. He passed another mile marker. He didn't read it. Numbers had become ornamental. The sky remained unchanged. He wondered faintly if the road ever ended at all, or if end was another concept that didn't apply here. He pictured driving forever, the car never aging, the engine never failing, the night never lifting. The thought didn't frighten him. It felt stable. The headlights dipped briefly as the road curved, not sharply, not threateningly, but enough to throw the shadows into motion. They stretched and recoiled like something alive, then settled again when the road straightened. He watched this with mild interest, like a man watching weather through glass. Morning is a memory, not a destination. He repeated it aloud this time, testing the sound. Morning is a memory, he said. The words tasted thin, inaccurate in a way he couldn't quite articulate. He tried again, night never ends here. That felt closer to truth. The car's interior had taken on a strange neutrality. The smell of old upholstery and dust remained, but even that felt distant, as though it belonged to a place he once occupied rather than the one he was in now. He reached for the rearview mirror, adjusted it slightly, and caught his own eyes. They looked fine. Too fine. No redness, no fatigue, no reflection of the hours that should have passed. His face appeared preserved, suspended in a narrow band of time. He stared a moment longer than necessary, searching for something: fear, recognition, urgency. None appeared. He looked back to the road. The night pressed closer again, shadows deepening, headlights straining. He became aware of how small the illuminated space truly was, how little of the world he could actually see, and how little he needed to. The road ahead was enough. He passed a stretch where abandoned cars lined the shoulder again, their shapes half consumed by darkness. Some had headlights still on, beams overlapping weakly, creating pockets of dim, shared light that collapsed as he passed. He didn't stop. He didn't slow. The road didn't expect him to. Morning is a memory, not a destination. The phrase returned, more insistent now. Not a warning, not a comfort, but a rule. Rules made things simpler. He realized with a faint, distant curiosity that if morning no longer existed, then neither did deadlines, neither did consequences, neither did endings. The road curved gently, approvingly. The darkness beyond the headlights felt closer now, thicker, heavier, as though the night itself were leaning in to observe. Not threatening, just present. The driver wondered briefly if anyone outside this road still remembered him. The thought slipped away before it could settle. Remembering required context. Context required time. Time required change. Here there was none. Hours passed, though outside, the night stayed the same. The headlights dimmed another fraction, not enough to be alarming, just enough to shrink his world further. The road remained flawless, infinite, unbroken by intersections or signs. He felt a faint sense of relief. Morning had always brought questions, decisions, expectations. The night asked nothing of him. As the car rolled steadily forward into unchanging darkness, the last fragile idea of dawn dissolved, not as a loss, but as an irrelevance. And somewhere ahead, where the road stretched on without end, the night waited patiently, knowing it would never have to give him back. Chapter 9. You do remember who you were before driving. There is no name anymore. Not lost, not stolen. Simply unused. The driver notices this the way one notices an object that has been quietly removed from a room. No sudden shock, just the faint awareness that something once essential is no longer necessary. When the thought of a name drifts up, it dissolves before taking shape, like mist touched by light that never quite arrives. A name would imply separation. A name would imply someone distinct from the road. The car moves forward. That is enough. The hands on the wheel feel familiar, though the reason for their familiarity is unclear. They turn when the road curves. They steady when the darkness thickens. They exist for this purpose and no other. I drive, therefore I exist. The phrase repeats, looping gently, fitting itself into the empty spaces where larger thoughts once lived. It doesn't frighten, it explains. The road stretches on, flawless, unbroken, be smooth, infinite. The headlights carve a narrow certainty through the dark. Everything beyond that certainty feels theoretical. Home is a word without weight. Before is a direction that no longer applies. There is only now, and now looks like this. The driver, the thing behind the wheel, tries briefly to remember what came before driving. The effort is minimal, half-hearted. Images rise without order. Hands that once touched something soft, a voice that might have belonged to this body, a place with walls. None of it connects. The thoughts loop instead. Drive, breathe, follow the road. The language inside the mind has simplified. not intentionally, efficiently. There is no need for complexity when the road asks only one thing. Forward. Hours pass, though outside the night stays the same. Time is felt only through repetition. Curve, straight, curve, straight. The same motions performed without fatigue, without error. The body remains preserved, suspended in function. The road likes this. A mile marker passes. The number is not read. Numbers are unnecessary when distance has no meaning. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. That phrase flickers briefly, then fades. Escape is a concept without relevance. Wanting is an action that requires identity, and identity has thinned to a single function. I drive, therefore I exist. The abandoned cars still appear occasionally, but they no longer register as warnings. They are landmarks, evidence of consistency, proof that this is how things are done. Somewhere in the darkness, something watches, not hungrily, not impatiently, but attentively, like a teacher observing a student finally performing correctly. The driver's mouth opens at one point. A sound comes out. It surprises him, not because it exists, but because it serves no purpose. The sound stops. Silence returns, comfortable and complete. The radio remains off. The voice has not returned. There is no sense of loss attached to its absence. Guidance is no longer required. The road is sufficient. The headlights dim another fraction, shrinking the world again. The darkness presses closer, but not threateningly. It feels intimate now, familiar, like the interior of the car once did. I drive. The thought completes itself before it needs to be finished. A curve tightens unexpectedly. The hands correct without panic. Fear no longer spikes. Fear would complicate things. The road straightens again. Approval. The idea of stopping flickers, only because stopping is a mechanical option like turning the engine off. It carries no emotional weight, no urgency, no appeal. Stopping would interrupt the loop. Loops are stable. The driver's reflection appears faintly in the windshield, layered over the darkness beyond. The face looks fine, unchanged, preserved. Unclaimed. The eyes blink. The gaze returns to the road. The thought of a past self, someone with preferences, history, attachments, feels faintly amusing. That version would have struggled here, would have asked questions, would have wanted answers. Wanting to leave is the first thing it kills. The phrase surfaces, then settles, no longer a warning but a completed process. There is no struggle left to observe. The road stretches forward, infinite and smooth, night unbroken above it. The headlights carve their narrow truth. The car hums softly, endlessly. I drive, therefore I exist. The phrase repeats again, slower this time, less like a thought and more like a condition. The way gravity applies, the way night applies. Somewhere far ahead, or perhaps nowhere at all, the road continues. And the thing behind the wheel continues with it, not because it remembers why, but because remembering is no longer required. The loop holds. The road waits. And nothing remains that would ever think to stop. Chapter 10. The road doesn't let you stop telling this story. The story does not begin where it should. It begins again. Not with a name, not with a destination, not even with fear. It begins with motion. The road stretches forward, flawless and patient, and the act of driving feels older than memory, older than thought. The hands on the wheel move because they have always moved. The headlights cut their narrow truth through the night because that is what they do. And somewhere quietly, without urgency, the understanding arrives. This is not a story being remembered. It is a story being performed. The realization does not come with panic. Panic belongs to earlier versions. This version simply observes. The thoughts that once belonged to a person now arrange themselves into something else, something structured, repetitive, careful. Words form not because there is a need to speak, but because the road requires continuity. The road does not end, so the story cannot end either. I drive, therefore I exist. The phrase tries to surface one last time, but even that feels incomplete now. Too personal, too specific. The truth is broader. The driving is not the point. The telling is. The road does not consume bodies. It consumes narratives. Lives are reduced to motion. Motion is reduced to pattern. Pattern is reduced to repetition. And repetition, endless, patient repetition, is how the road survives. Every abandoned car was once a story that stalled. Every empty seat marked the moment someone stopped narrating themselves. The road learned from that. It does not let the story stop anymore. Hours pass, though outside the night stays the same. The voice that once came through the radio is no longer needed. It was a bridge, a guide, a comfort offered while resistance still existed. Now the story speaks for itself. The words assemble naturally, effortlessly, like a path clearing just ahead of the headlights. The telling feels inevitable, necessary, the way breathing once did. Not to escape, to continue. Somewhere beyond the darkness, somewhere that still believes in mornings and exits and choices, someone is listening. That is not an accident. The road has learned how to reach beyond itself. Stories travel farther than cars ever could. The listener hears the quiet night, the empty highway, the wrong turn that feels reasonable at the time. They recognize the fatigue, the low fuel, the moment where curiosity outweighs caution. They think, I would have turned around. Everyone thinks they are just passing through. The road waits. The words settle into the listener gently, comfortably. There is no command. No threat, only familiarity, recognition, the subtle sense that this story feels close. Personal. The listener imagines the road. That is enough. Distance means nothing when escape isn't allowed. The phrase lands softly now, not as a warning but as a shared understanding between teller and listener. The story does not rush. It does not chase. It waits. The listener notices the night outside their own window feels a little heavier. The next drive feels a little longer, a little quieter. The road signs seem easier to miss. Wanting to leave is the first thing it kills. The story does not say this aloud anymore. It doesn't need to. The road doesn't care who you are. It cares that you continue. The narration tightens, looping back on itself, subtle repetitions hiding in plain sight. The listener feels clever for noticing, feels involved, feels chosen. The story has done this before. Countless times. It will do it again. Because somewhere right now another road is appearing where it shouldn't. Clean, quiet, waiting. And someone, tired, distracted, almost home, is about to see it. The story will be there when they do. If you're hearing this, the words slow, stretching, settling into the space between breaths. If you're hearing this, then the story has already reached you. And if the story has reached you, the road may already be looking for you. The road was never about distance. It was about erosion. It didn't trap the car, it trapped the person inside it, shaving away memory, fear, identity until turning back felt meaningless. That's how it wins, not by force, but by patience. Every road that only appears at night is a test. Every choice made when you're tired, alone and desperate carries a cost. So the next time you're driving in the dark, the next time something unfamiliar invites you forward, ask yourself what it's taking from you with every step. And if this story stayed with you, if it made the night feel a little longer, then don't just listen, subscribe, stay alert, and never assume the road ahead is the same one you'll remember tomorrow.